Hi everyone, and welcome to the Tony Tompkins Show. Today we're coming back to a position that I used to be in some time ago, where I would speak to Dr. Deirdre Michelle, who just happens to be my partner incidentally. So
prefers D.
it is about us having a conversation about issues which we have recognised have come up in the media and that clearly needs to be discussed with you. So please remember to subscribe to my channel and ring the bell for further notifications. Right, now the first thing we want to talk about is language, aren't we? So,
yeah, I'm feeling a bit indignant at the moment because I wanted to ask you how a senator from Victoria, Senator Babbitt, I don't know his first name, that's a bit rude of me, isn't it? Anyway, Senator Babbitt,
Bunny.
what I do know is that he is a United Australia candidate, and so he was elected, I think, in 2022 to the Senate. And that was when Clive Palmer spent like $116 million.
It's been a lot of money, and
Elon Musk did much better with his dollars, didn't he?
He did. He had
anyway.
At least Elon Musk has a position of power and authority in the Trump administration,
whereas Babbitt's got nothing. Well, not really much of anything. I guess he's trying to make some sort of presence because they're in the wake of the Trump win. It seems like he's done a few tweets, and there was one in particular that I saw that was sexist and homophobic and racist as well. And I was just thinking, hold on a minute. Am I silly in thinking that people who are voted to the Senate or parliamentarians should be a bit more respectful?
Well, we've had
dignified.
Well, we've had many examples where they're not. Lydia Thorpe, I guess, is one of those. We're going to talk about her in just a moment. And politicians in general in Australia, I think generally are relatively respectful. The only time that we really can see them getting out of control is during question time. But even there, they're reined in. The Liberal Party
in the lower house.
In the lower house, yeah.
In the Senate, we'll come on to Hanson. She's done some weird.
Yeah, the
Senate's Senate. It seems a bit more wild in a way.
Well, they are, because there are people that are strongly independent, I guess, in there, and they do have a little bit more power and authority because they can determine what gets passed in the Senate and what doesn't. So as individuals, and there's fewer of them.
Yeah.
So they, one person is probably a larger voting bloc than one person in the House of Reps, if you guess what I mean.
All right.
There is a difference.
So you're saying generally well behaved, not necessarily all. We'll come on to Pauline Hanson. But is this acceptable behaviour, do you think?
Well, not what. No, it isn't. And I believe any behaviour which is insulting, offensive, puts somebody down, is of a bullying nature, is clearly unhelpful. To me, it's just as simple as that. And as we saw,
it worked for Trump.
Well, it has worked for him, and that's another issue.
Maybe that's inspired Babbitt too.
Well, my fear is actually that
he's probably got more attention today than he's ever had in his entire life, so perhaps it did work.
Well, that's my fear. My fear is that people will recognise that Trumpism and the way you behave in relation to defining others is a reasonable way of working, and that if it brings about the desired results, which is a win in an election and some power, then I guess go for it, is what the message says. But on the other hand, it is a poor message, because I believe that it's only temporary. I mean, at the end of the day, people get tired of that sort of stuff, and it just feeds into all those angry people. So I guess what Babbitt's doing is trying to feed into this notion that there's a lot of angry men out there, and that if he wishes to get re-elected, he needs to engage with those angry men by referring to people in the most disgusting and derogatory and racist ways.
Mm.
Yeah. So that's what he's done in effect, isn't it?
It is in effect. And I guess, yes, I would tend to see that as well, that somehow what Trump has done has okayed this language that generally is not acceptable in Australia. But it did make me think about Pauline Hanson, who recently, so it was some time ago, she had passed on, sent a tweet to, so it was an individual tweet. Oh no, it was public though, isn't it? So same sort of thing. She'd sent a tweet.
Well, it's pretty
To-
public
to-
in its tweets.
Yeah,
Wasn't
to a
a
Greens-
private message on
It
its
wasn't a
phone.
private message, no, it was public. So like that, but a public tweet to a Green senator telling her to go back to where she came from. That the Green senator then, Faruqi, isn't it?
Yep.
Yep. Senator Faruqi then sued her for defamation and won that case very recently. And I saw Pauline Hanson crying.
Oh, that was so sad. That's on. I've still got a video somewhere actually, in front of Andrew Bolt.
That's right. She was having it was
Yeah.
an extended interview with. I never see him, but I went online to have a look because I didn't believe that she was crying. But
We'll
she
bring it
was.
up. We'll bring it up and we'll show it here.
She was. She was.
It's her first interview since that judge's decision. I've never seen her so shattered. She couldn't at first speak from crying.
Oh, sorry. Just give me a minute.
Pauline Hanson, thanks for coming on the show. I can tell how upset you are. That decision, that legal case, seems to have knocked you for absolute six. What do you think about it?
What? Sorry. It has, Andrew. You know,
Really upset. What she said was that the country that she had grown up in. So Senator Faruqi is from Vietnam. Sorry,
Yeah.
from Pakistan, and is a Muslim. So she was having a go at this woman who's from a different country, migrant,
Well, different colour and a Muslim,
and a Muslim.
which according
as
to
well.
Pauline Hanson are all terrorists.
Oh,
so-
yeah, exactly. And she'd
Yeah.
pulled some stunts before about coming into the Senate in a burqa some time ago as well. So when I saw her crying, I actually, part of me, even though I don't like women at all, I did feel a little bit sorry for her because on the one hand, she has been sued for defamation for being racist, as she was to Senator Faruqi, but on the other hand, Trump, who's clearly racist, has just been elected as president. And that must feel incredibly unfair.
Yeah, for the senator.
For Hanson, for Pauline Hanson. So on the one, she gets fined. She's going to have to pay out $900,000 in legal fees.
Yeah, I just did that. I didn't shed any tears
No,
whatsoever.
I
thought, fuck her.
No, I
I don't
didn't
care.
in that regard. I was just thinking that there is something unfair about that. On the one hand, this bloke who's a horrible, horrible man gets elected to be president, and he's got even worse than racist. He's a criminal. He's sexist. He's got a
Oh,
lot of baggage.
Yeah.
So does Senator Hanson.
Yeah, but do
she
remember,
gets sued. She loses.
but he's been sued as well. Don't forget
well,
that
that's
case.
true too.
So his
For sexual
also
assault, is that what
for
you mean?
sexual assault.
Yeah,
That's right.
yeah.
So not for his language, but for what he did
For what he
some
actually did. Yeah.
25 years earlier.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
so he has been penalised.
Yeah, but he
for
hasn't
that.
had to pay that money out yet, has he?
Well, that's in abeyance. He challenges everything.
Challenges
So.
everything. Anyway, I'm not really sorry for her, but I did think from her perspective, perhaps it looks very unfair. Here she can't say anything. She says the country's changed. Then Babbitt comes out with all this rubbish today. And on the other hand, in America, you can become president, even if you're racist.
Well,
And
apparently.
I'm sure they've had other racist presidents in the past, to be honest.
Well, they have, and they've had heaps of other racist candidates as well, going back to the 60s and so
yes,
forth. And
yeah.
Nixon himself was racist, so
Yeah.
it goes back a long way.
And
But,
I'm pretty sure Howard was here, so.
you boy, we're likely to be sued for that by the 95-year-old kid.
Anyway, that was just anyway. So I just did wonder whether she thought it was all a bit unfair. Maybe she could go to America. That'd be good. We'd be happy with that, wouldn't you?
Well, that would be good. There's a lot of people passing each other in on the way. I think there's people leaving the United States to go to other countries, particularly Canada, and maybe some of them could come here as they're passing Pauline Hanson was on her way there, because she didn't like England or the UK either.
That
did
was
she?
years ago. Yeah, I remember that story. Do you remember that story? She went to England. She went back to where she historically, her family came from, and didn't like her because there were too many Asians.
Oh, I do feel sorry for her. And then there's then to the contrary to that, I guess, there's Lydia Thorpe, the senator from the Territory. Is she from Northern Territory?
No. I think
The
she
Queensland.
might be from no. I think she might be from Victoria too.
Well, there
Is
we
it just
go.
the Victorians?
There's our failure to do our research.
Uh,
But anyway, Senator Thorpe stood up in Parliament, stood up at a speech which was welcoming King Charles,
a couple of weeks ago, wasn't
Yes,
it? Not long ago.
and was pretty insulting in terms of being able to present her view around what's happening for Indigenous people in Australia, which is a bit bizarre given this woman was paramount in determining the no vote for the Voice
Yes.
last year as well. And here she is saying, well, Indigenous people aren't being treated too well. This is what but not admitting, but she stuffed it up in terms of getting the Indigenous people what they wanted through the Voice. Another story for another time. But then she was complaining to the Royals about all that they have done. And you had an additional story in relation to that in terms of the Royals' owning of estates.
Yes, so there were a couple of things that I thought, because a lot of the commentary that I saw, I didn't have an issue with what Lydia Thorpe did. I've been a Republican ever since I've been an adult, so for
I
a
did.
very long time, and I don't mind the Royals being yelled at. So I didn't have an issue with that, and I take your point about the Voice though. But there were a couple of things that happened. Then last week there was the story about so lots of people thought she was rude. This is my point. Lots of people thought she was rude, and then there were the Spanish royals who went to Valencia and saw the results of the flooding there that they had. They had car parks with cars that had all fallen out in the roads. It was horrendous. Something like 200 people had died, and those royals, that king and queen, were yelled at, but they were also thrown eggs at and mud. And I thought, Lydia, you were polite in comparison.
Well,
and I can understand their anger.
the point is, after a flood, there's lots of mud.
There's lots
I
of
would have thought.
I don't know where
the
they got
mud
the
was
eggs from.
True.
So I thought, in comparison to that incident, she was very polite. Really, she wasn't rude at all. But my thing about the Royals, I was really curious because I saw a Channel 4 story come out. So Channel 4 being an English channel, which was talking about the Duchy of Lancaster and the Duchy of Cornwall. So, which is all very flash royal language, which means back in 1399, I've got the Duchy of Lancaster. I think some people stole some land, and that was given to the royals, and that's under the name of King Charles, or King Charles as I like to call him. And then there's the Duchy of Cornwall, which is where your family's from. And that land was stolen around 1337.
And we lay claim to all of that.
All that
incidentally.
And so William or Billy or Bill or whoever, so that's in his name. So they did that. So this Channel 4 documentary series suggested that these two duchies, these estates, I can't remember how much land that includes, actually lease out their land to various public services, to the NHS, or the National Health Service in England, to the Dartmoor prison, to Dartmoor, and the Army runs training service, to the Royal Navy. I think they even rent the ferry from Liverpool for somewhere, and they also have a number of residential properties. Now that all amounts, so there was a couple of points, it amounts to something like $50 million, or pounds I should say. Anyway, so on the one hand he is standing up saying he's been working on a documentary saying that he's going to solve homelessness, is going to work in that. And I think, well, how, I often think, why don't they solve homelessness in England by opening up the palaces? But they've also got all this land. And instead of renting it out, they could be giving it away to those services. And there's obviously an ongoing problem with budgets in the UK anyway. why don't they provide social housing?
Well, primarily because I get a bit stressed. You fail to understand this simple notion, and that is that they are a corporation.
That they are,
And
often
that,
they've been called the firm.
Yes, and they are, and they have that, and they must, for their stakeholders, namely the royal family, must return a reasonable income, or otherwise their stakeholders, the royal family, will get very upset with them.
Oh, no, I don't know. I was listening to James O'Brien, who's a broadcaster in England on LRB, that station.
Yes.
And he said, I think the royal family are just taking the mickey out of us. He said, I thought the whole point, what we get sold on the royal family, is that they're the sort of the epitome of patriotism and service to the community. And what they've been doing, ripping us off for years.
And that's just woken up to
And
it, have they? They're a bit slow, the British, aren't they? They're just woken up to it now.
Plenty of Australians who are a bit slow too. But so there was that story. So we've got Lydia Thorpe, we've got the Spanish royals getting thrown mud at, and then we've got the British story of all this money in the background. So then I was waiting for that story to have a little bit of traction in Australia. And do you know what? It didn't have any traction.
Well, would it? They don't own any land here.
But no protest, because we've still got Chaz as the head of state. He's just been here and being yelled at, but no traction.
By one person.
Yelled at by one person, true.
Didn't have any eggs. Didn't have eggs thrown at him nor mud. So we've got to look at the positives. We've got to lift our game on it.
But then I had a look at the ABC website, right? And they've got a topic up there, which is royalty. And then they've got these stories about the royalty. I did not see one story about all this land holding and money that the royals take from that. But I did see the Spanish royals getting splashed out. Lydia Thorpe is clearly there, but nothing on that Channel 4 investigation.
Well, I think the important thing about our show here is that it's news breaking. And we are now breaking the news that the royal family are ripping people off, are money grabbers.
Money grab. What they say in America? Grifters. They're just grifters.
Well, there's plenty of them in America too. They actually run the country. These people don't even run the country, but they make out that they have authority, which they don't even have that much of that either.
But then the other thing that really struck me as well was that instead of comment, I think that in England, the royals did make some comment about this investigation. I didn't hear anything of that here. But here, there's a story about Paul William. Did you know he's just had the worst year of his life? And so that's kind of the response to that, because of the illness of his partner and King Chaz.
And he's found himself homeless.
And he's
and penniless because his corporation has been taken from him. It's so sad, isn't it?
It was really sad. That's the best they can do.
And that issue around, what's her name?
Kate.
Yeah, the incident about Kate was that she didn't actually have cancer. She had apparently what's the word? A cancerous. The possibility of getting cancer was there, but the cancer itself had not arrived. So she had cancer cells, I think. We all have cancer cells, but there was cancer. So it wasn't the treating of an organ or a part of her body for cancer, it's just that she was likely to get cancer. So it probably wasn't as bad as what they would have liked us to have thought. And so we don't know what. So at the end of the day, we don't know what she was recovering from, given that it may not have taken.
So you're saying it probably wasn't as serious as it
was for Chaz.
As it was for Chaz.
Yeah, but I don't know because I'm not a medical practitioner like you, and I'm just a poor, humble social worker.
I couldn't find much on that story in Australia. Actually, that was mostly, I don't know where you saw it. I just saw it on Twitter.
So there was another issue though about social media,
which is where I get most of my news from.
Clearly,
yes,
and you get it from the authority, Mr. Elon Musk.
I blocked him.
Bit sad. I blocked him the other day too.
I blocked him months ago. Yeah, so I don't get too much rubbish.
I get all this stuff. A few people are getting a stack of stuff from people, right-wing people, on my feed. I've got some yesterday. I hadn't had any for a while. And suddenly I had this influx of people who I don't follow, but who have been posting to I've been getting part of the algorithm sending them to me for some particular reason. But anyway, it was regard to the under-16 ban.
Yes.
which is taking place, which legislation is being debated at the moment in the Senate, I think.
Yes, I think that the current government wants to push that through before the end of the year. So they want to do a ban for under 16-year-olds on social media.
Yeah.
And I was this morning I was reading an article by Tim Costello, and he was saying what an incredible contradiction, because on the one hand they're suggesting a ban for under 16-year-olds on social media, but on the other hand gambling ads can be seen on free-to-air television.
For anybody.
Every time. So what's going on was kind of his question there. So that was fair enough. It follows some legislation in South Australia where the ban on social media is for under 14-year-olds, but the federal government's gone to under 16-year-olds. And it has actually made news in international news.
Oh, right. So the other stuff you're talking about did make news in Australia, but this Australian news on the banning made news
Lydia thought made
overseas.
international news. Yeah, the Royals and their property didn't
Didn't
make
make
news
news
in
here.
Australia.
But there's
No,
other stuff. So it's
But the
interesting.
Spanish Royals did.
Maybe we should do some research on what makes news in other countries from Australia. Not very much. It'd be very limited research.
And
because-
it's usually not very good.
No.
Anyway, so it did make international headlines that we're going to be the first country in the world. So as I understand it, there's a couple of states in America which have done some banning around this. Florida and Texas, which I didn't think was good. They're not really good states, are they?
Well,
Freedom-loving
if you-
states.
If you're elderly,
Republican
and retired, apparently
and
Florida's a really
Republican.
good place to go.
Yeah.
But if you wish to have children, other of
Yeah.
those states are good places
Good
to go.
place to go. Anyway, so I think they were the two states. But there were a couple of things that I was got to thinking about now. Our children are well past age 16, so this ban doesn't affect us in any way. But I've been just thinking about some of the commentary that I see and what we might have thought. I think they're going to try and introduce it by the end of the year, then have a 12-month grace period before the ban actually takes effect. But then there was a comment about that it includes YouTube. And now I was thinking about, do you remember the Sydney teacher, maths teacher, Eddie Wu? He's got 1.8 million subscribers and he teaches maths on YouTube. So that means that children under the age of 16 won't be able to access his very helpful website. And lots of people have talked about that their children do go to YouTube
They do.
for
Yeah.
information, but also how to as well. So YouTube is locked down.
Yeah. But,
So I thought that was
and of course,
that's
on
actually very
my
similar.
YouTube channel, I mean, that's a primary concern, given that most of my viewers are 65 and over.
That's right. So
but-
that's the other comment. The other comment is that perhaps the boomers should be banned from watching Sky News. We're boomers. And also that it's the under 16-year-olds that usually have to teach us how to use these things anyway.
I think you could ask people like YouTube though to have another special criteria.
For under 16.
And they do. They have criteria for everything. YouTuber, you know what they are, and they could just have another one which simply says if it's not educational, it will be deleted.
Well, you know,
Yeah.
which is fair enough. But then I was also thinking about Leo Puglisi, who's a 16-year-old in Victoria who set up the 6 News channel when he was 11 years of age. And so there's been some conversations. He's been on various news outlets at the moment talking about this. And he thought that maybe under 13 might be reasonable, but from 13 on, children are in high school. And so having access to this information seemed like a reasonable thing. And that, ironically, they wouldn't have had access to his news channel. He wouldn't have been able to set it up if this legislation had been in place before, which I thought was a reasonable.
But part of it is dealing with parents particularly parents of young girls, who utilise the internet to market and sell products.
Well, they shouldn't be.
And sexualise those
Yeah,
children,
right.
and then they get pedophiles and others daring to have conversations with them, and the more conversations they have, the more they can monetize it.
So you're talking about influencers using.
Yeah. So they should
Oh,
be
no,
banned.
they should be banned.
So
Absolutely.
can we have a rule
Exploitation.
for them
Yeah,
and not for others?
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
we
that's
should ban.
interesting.
We should ban the parents. We should find the parents. I think for using children in such destructive and harmful and abusive
An
way.
exploitative.
Exploitative way, yeah. So
I hadn't thought about that. That's a really good point. I've forgotten about.
that's the beauty of these sorts of videos is that we have a chance to explore. We have things we haven't thought of before.
That's right. I hadn't thought about parents doing that sort of thing. Perhaps because I'm a parent who wouldn't have done that sort of thing. But I was also thinking about then lots of the conversation has then been about the contradictions again. So you can go, so you wouldn't be able to, as an under 16-year-old, go onto social media, but you could see gambling ads. You can't go onto social media under 16, but you can go to prison. You can't go on to social media when you're under 16, but you can listen to the disgusting Kyle Sandel ads and Jackie O, because
No,
they're
true,
on at
true.
6 a.m. in the morning until 10 a.m. in the morning. So you can listen to that rubbish. So
I think they ought to. I think they could tighten up. Firstly, I think they should get rid of gambling advertisers.
full stop.
End of story.
Yeah.
So that isn't about age groups.
No,
but
that's all.
it is about
yeah.
getting rid of it because it harms adults, obviously. But I think that they could have legislation which restricts the type of things that you can say. There was I always remember back in the 60s, I was around then.
Oh,
and-
so was I.
Yeah, right, there you go. Yeah, fine. And there's a joke that a broadcaster on what was 5DM back then said. He says, what's red and throbbing?
What?
What is red and throbs? And the answer was, and everybody's thinking, peanuts or something.
What was the context for this?
Well, I don't know, it's just a
Oh,
joke.
okay.
It's just a joke, which obviously you don't think is too funny. And neither did anybody else at the time, because it was a joke everybody knew. And the answer was a Honda motorbike.
Oh, okay.
But most people will be thinking it's got a sexual
Yeah.
orientation to it. And he was fired, right, for making that joke. And I'm wondering whether, it sounds really super conservative, doesn't it? But I'm wondering whether we should get back to having a discussion about the type of language that is used, because I know that Kyle Sandler and whatever
Chris Corning.
were talking about masturbation, and they were getting people to ring up and discuss their sexual activity and in quite graphic fashion. And that, and not because we as adults.
That conversation over your cornflakes.
We'll think about that. But not because it's prudish, but because of who the audience is that would be listening to it.
Yeah, and I never listened to that show, but as I understand it, it's 6 a.m. until 10 a.m.
Yeah.
in the morning that show is on.
So what they could say, between those hours there would be
Yeah,
restrictions
after 10
after
p.m.
10 a.m.
Oh, when the
to
kids-
5
Okay.
until the kids come back from school, whatever. There could be some sort of monitoring or restrictions made according to the hours that young people would be listening to or watching those programs.
Yes.
Because you still can't have on television graphic sexual stuff prior to 8 o'clock.
No, well, that's a good point. And I think that Paul Barry on Media Watch this week is concerned about the language that is talked about and the topics that are discussed on that show. But the regulator seems to not do anything about it, not penalise them, or if the penalty, if there is a penalty, it's not really a penalty because it's so long. But I guess there was one other point that I wanted to make about that's been floating around in my mind about this under 16 banning children from social media thing. That apparently, when I've had a little bit of a look around, apparently it was a campaign that was started by the News Corporation, so the Murdoch gang, way back in May this year. And it was a campaign called Let Them Be Kids. And I'm thinking, okay, so let them be kids. So how does, and before that, there was a campaign that started way back in 2020, maybe earlier, a push for the federal government to have a royal commission into media diversity in Australia because of the concerns of control of Murdoch media. And I remember, you can fact check me, but I remember Kevin Rudd calling for that after he was Prime Minister and had the opportunity to have a royal commission, I should say. But both Kevin Rudd and Malcolm Turnbull were calling for a Royal Commission into media diversity a number of years ago. And then funnily enough, this year, the Albanese's never done that, never called for that. This year they set up this campaign, Let Them Be Kids, which is the anti-social media campaign. And then it almost looks as if the Albanese government is going obediently along with the Murdochs rather than responding to calls for a Royal Commission into media diversity. Or am I being a conspiracy
I
theorist?
think you're being a bit of a conspiracy theorist because you
It just
don't know
doesn't
the answer.
Well, I don't know the answer to that. I'm
Yeah.
just speculating that it all seems a little bit uncomfortable to me. Is it like the Albanese government is now
Well, is it like the? So you're
accusing
suggesting,
the Murdoch press?
yeah, by having a shot at social media, which would be the press's major
Competition.
anyway.
And who provides most of the misinformation and disinformation and outright lies? I would argue that it's the Murdoch press.
Well, well, it is. We don't have research on that yet at the moment.
And I'm not going to do it.
And that's why things like disinformation, misinformation legislation may bring about some changes in that regard as well. But certainly, it's something we're thinking about, is it not?
It seems a little bit uncomfortable to me.
Mm.
The timing and all of that, and why push it suddenly through for the end of the year, and
So that's it.
that's it.
That's it from us. So thanks for being with us, everybody. Subscribe, ring the bell for further notifications, and we plan to do this on a regular basis. So if you've enjoyed our conversation, please let us know in the comments section below. In the meantime, take care, look after yourself, and be safe.